How you doing? My name is Christopher Brown, and you're now listening to my podcast, Sports Talk with Chris. Now, the NBA just released their finalists for the awards. The finalists are the top three. Now, my episode that I just released on all audio platforms, link is going to be down below. This is going to be posted on all my social medias and on YouTube. And I dropped the episode giving my top five for each award. And the finalists are three, which I understand, but I did it so my favorite three, all my, awards, favorites, predictions were in order. And so when I look at, the NBA finalists for these awards, they're very interesting. They're very interesting, to say the least. So let's start off with MVP. The finalists are Steph Curry, Joel Embiid, and Nikola Jokic. I agree with two of those. I don't agree with Steph. What does the MVP mean? What does the MVP award mean? Somebody help me out. I really feel like Steph Curry is in this because of name recognition. Now, don't get me wrong. He had a dominant season, but so did Bradley Beal, and nobody wants to talk about it. Bradley Beal averaged 30 plus for the second straight year, and I don't hear his name getting mentioned at all. At all. And then it's funny because, you see people saying Steph has no hope, but then you see when the Warriors win that, oh my God, we got all these guys. We can really make a run with these guys. A. Wiggins, Draymond, Kelly Oubre, Bazemore, all these great role players. But then when they lose, they trash. Make up your mind. Steph Curry has a very good roster over there in Golden State. Very good roster. Now, they were, injured. By the time you listen to this, the play-in tournament is over. They lost to the Grizzlies and to the Lakers. I really feel like if they had Kelly Oubre, Eric Pascal, and Wiseman. One, I don't even know if they'd be in a play-in tournament, but two, they definitely would have beat the Grizzlies like with ease. So I just, with that narrative saying he doesn't have help, he has help. Maybe, you're not used to an actual regular team. You're still used to having 5 All-Stars, but that's another story. But I'm not going to hate on Steph Curry. He did have a dominant regular season. Arguably the best player in the world. But I thought MVP mean most valuable player. And so when I look at the two guys that are in this, Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic, and what they mean to their team, Nikola Jokic for his team was the best scorer, best rebounder, best passer. He did everything offensively for his team, and he played all 72 games. I got to take my hat off to him. He took that jump in the regular season because usually, like I said, in my episode, in the regular season, Nikola Jokic was a guy that used to, I don't want to say take off nights, but he'd be inconsistent. One game he had 30, he had 28, he had 35, then he'll have 14, 13, 12. And I was like that for years, but this year he, continued his dominance from the playoffs and, passed that on to the regular season. And this dude, I think it was top 10 in scoring, rebounding, and assist as a center. Great shooting splits. He definitely deserves to be here. And the media already picked him as his favorite, but it's shocking that I really feel like Steph Curry is going to have a chance now because of name recognition and that they made the 8th seed. But the Wizards made the 8th seed, and Bradley Beal had another 30, point season for the second year in a row. But I just don't hear his name. It's shocking. Then Joel Embiid, another guy that was the most valuable player for his team, was the best scorer, best rebounder, arguably the best defender. Joel Embiid had a dominant season. I think he had, averaged 6 more points than last year, way better shooting efficiencies, more dominant, one of the best, if not the best free throw, guy this year is getting to the line and knocking it down on great splits. His dominance, was in full effect this year, Joel Embiid. That's why he's on here. Not only are we the number 1 seed in the East, but we're the top 3 seed, and I say we because I'm a Sixers fan, top 3 seed in the entire league. And that's not happening without the increase of play from Joel Embiid. So I get that these two guys on here, they're the most valuable player on their team, and they had a dominant season. When I look at Steph, it's just a dominant season. And so it's crazy that I'm not hating on him. I'm just trying to hold him to the same standard that we held everybody else, because when Russ and James Harden was taking teams that, had no business, quote unquote, didn't have the right players, at the same type of roster that Steph has, and they're top 5, top 6 seeds. Same thing with LeBron, and he's continually taking them to top 5, top 6 teams. That's what we're expecting from them. But Steph Curry is kind of getting a pass because he doesn't have the usual all-star numbers around him. Not taking anything away from Steph, I'm just holding him to the same standard we hold everybody else to. Because if James Harden was to be on this team, an AC is not good enough. If Russ was to be on his team, AC is not good enough. Russ had a team just like this, if not worse, and he still took them to a top 5 seed the year KD left. Chris Paul was on the Thunder last year. This team is way better than that Thunder team last year. Or not even, they just the same as that Thunder team last year, if not better. Number 1 pick, lottery picks, all-stars, future Hall of Famers on that Warriors team. And that Thunder team with Chris Paul was a top 5 seed. Top 5. Steph barely made it to the 8th seed. He was in a playing tournament. Why is Chris Paul not in a finalist? For me, Chris Paul was number 3 because MVP, I take in consideration how good you play. Obviously you have to be one of the best players in the league, but what was your impact? What was your value to your team? And Chris Paul was one of the most valuable players to his team. So for me, I would take Steph out and I'll put Chris Paul. The next, award, NBA Defensive Player, the finalists, you have Rudy Gobert, Draymond Green, and Ben Simmons. For everybody, saying why is Draymond Green on there, I think his game against the Lakers shows you why Draymond Green's on there. For me, he still is one of the best defenders in the NBA. Ben Simmons, for me, obviously is the favorite. Got his guarded 1 through 5. And Rudy Gobert. Me personally, I'm a Bam guy. Because I like guys that, Bam can defend the rim like Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert does a little bit better, but Bam's also more versatile. And he showed that this year by guarding multiple positions, by still being able to be that paint protector and also switch, be a lockdown defender when necessary. So this one is no arguments. Me personally, though, Bam is in my top 3. And Draymond, I think, was 4th or 5th. However, I'm not too mad at this one because, honestly, these are 3 great defenders. But I think Ben Simmons by far should run away with this award. Now, 6th Man of the Year award, this is where things get tricky, right? You have Jordan Clarkson, Joe Ingles, and Derrick Rose. Now you might ask yourself, why is things getting tricky? Because you got 2 guys from the same team. Just like the other year, we had 2 Clippers from the same team. And, the problem with that is, who's the 6th man? How are 2 guys from the same team up for the same award? That's confusing. Because who's the 6th man? And don't get me wrong, Joe Ingles had a hell of a year. Joe Ingles had a hell of a year, and I think the problem might be they didn't, have a, third guy maybe that was over Joe Ingles. Joe Ingles had a hell of a year, and if it wasn't for Jordan Clarkson being on his team, he probably would be the favorite. However, this is Jordan Clarkson award, so I'm not going to spend too much time ranting on the fact that you got 2 guys from the same team because my pick, Shake Milton, did not live up to the hype. And the reason I picked Shake in the beginning of the year is because you look at Doc Rivers and the guards he has on his teams and the backup guards and their impact. And Shake just was not consistent this year. He showed flashes that he could be a 6th man in the year, but, honestly, his play from, last year to this year, I don't want to say it went down, but I kind of want to say it went down. Honestly. Not saying he's a bad player. It's just I thought he was going to have a way better season. But when I look at Jordan Clarkson, I don't even, want to spend too much time on this because he's running away with this award. He was a microwave coming off the bench. He had the ultimate green light, the 2nd best scorer on his team. So for me, this is definitely Jordan Clarkson's award. Next award, Rookie of the Year. It's between 2 guys. They put Tyrese Halliburton in this award. I honestly think, he definitely was 3rd. The rookie, ladder this year, a lot of rookies didn't have that huge superstar impact like the top 2 did. But there was a lot of quality rookies in this draft that, are going to explode next year. I'm looking at guys like, Emmanuel Quickly. You see flashes how good he can be. He's just behind D Rose. James Wiseman, he just wasn't, healthy. That's the only problem with James Wiseman this year. He wasn't healthy. Obi Toppin, he's just in a, situation where he's not getting a lot of minutes. There's a lot of good. Cole Anthony was a rookie that is on a rebuilding team, but when he gets his minutes, he shines. So there's a lot of good rookies this year, but the top 2 by far are LaMelo and Anthony Edwards. The reason why I'm giving it to LaMelo over Anthony Edwards is that I personally think not only was his game just as dominant in his own senses and being an all-around star, but his game helped lead to victories. And when I look at the Timberwolves roster, it's not too bad. It's trash, but it's not like the worst roster in the league. And they lose games they should win. And that's part of coaching. That's part of players. And I'm not saying it's Anthony Edwards' fault. I'm just looking at LaMelo and how his dominant play led to victories and how he led to victories. Anthony Edwards, to me, this second half of the season, he did, kind of shorten the gap. LaMelo ran away with it that second half of the season. The Timberwolves finally put faith in their rookie, which was crazy because they've been should have done that since day one. He had some of the best scoring nights entire the whole league. I mean, he had a game, score 40 plus points on like 70% from the field, 70% from the 3-point line, like 100% from the free throw line, which is unheard of. So he definitely shortened the gap. However, I still think LaMelo runs away with this award. Most improved player, you have Jeremy Grant, Michael Porter Jr., and Randall. To be honest, the only reason Grant is in here because Christian Wood and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just so happen to be injured for more than half of the year. That's the only reason. And to be honest, I wouldn't have been mad if they put Zion over Jeremy Grant. I'm not hating on Jeremy Grant, but I low-key am because he left the Nuggets in order to join the Pistons. And for the beginning of the year, you saw him being a very good scorer. Very good score. I mean, he had, I think, like a 20 game run where he's scoring 20 plus points a night. But this year, it was just like, man. And not this year. The second half of the season was just like, man, where's the efficiency at? He just became one of the most volume scorer, inefficient guys in the league, and that's kind of a pet peeve of mine. That's probably why I'm hating. I hate volume scorers that just take 30 shots to score 30 points. I think that's very, very inefficient, especially if you're shooting less than 40%. In this NBA, efficiency is the key in my opinion, unless you have a great defense. But that's another story. But all hate aside, he did, I think, what he wanted to do, go to a team where he can show his offensive skill set, and he has it. He was the only player on that team. So I feel like if he, with the Nuggets, I understand why he left. He wanted a more offensive role. But, man, like, you're not a superstar for a team. However, let me try to stop hating. He did improve his game from last year to this year on the offensive end, so I give him his credit. Michael Porter Jr., dude went up 10 points. One of the best shooting splits we've seen this year, true shooting. Shot over 50% from the field, over 44% from the three-point line. I mean, this dude was a bucket. He's taking steps on showing why he's going to be one of the best wings in his game for a long time coming. And I think, having Jokic there, really being that main ball handler, him and Murray, he's focusing on scoring. And so I think he doesn't have to rush trying to be a playmaker, and it's going to come more easy to him than, how it would be if he was rushing for it. And so his game definitely jumped, and he's the player I always knew he would be. Watch him in high school, you saw how dominant he could be. He just happened to get injured in college. I don't know. And every time I bring up Michael Porter Jr., I'm going to be doing this for the rest of his career. I don't understand how he fell to 14. I don't care about the back injuries. Blake had the same injuries, the back messed up back, and then he missed the year, and then he came back and was the best, a top 5 power forward for 7, 8 straight years until he started to get injured, but that had nothing to do with the original injury. I don't understand how my Sixers didn't draft him. I don't understand how he went out the top 5, but he did, and he went to a great situation for him in Denver, and he's showing why he's going to be one of the best young talents. And so, most improved player from 9 points to 19 on better shooting splits. He definitely is in here. For me, the winner is probably going to be Julius Randle, because not only did he increase his points per game, rebounds, assists, shooting splits, but he was the best player on his team and led them to a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. So for me, he's definitely the clear-cut winner for the most improved player of the year. And all three got, this one was tricky because a lot of guys deserve the most improved player of the year. Like you're gonna look at them and say, oh, they had a big increase from year 1 to year 2, or this year to that year, like Zion, like Shea, like Christian Wood, and the list goes, like Lou Dort. A lot of guys that improve. It's just for me, Julius Randle, because he was the best player on his team. That's probably why he's going to get this award. And I honestly have him in MVP considerations as well. And I don't think we ever seen an MVP and the most improved player. That's funny. But the last finalists they dropped, Coach of the Year, you have Quinn Snyder, Tom Thibodeau, and Monty Williams. For me, this is essentially, I think, my top 3 I had. This is honestly the top 3 I had. Shout out to Doc, shout out to Steve Nash. I think, this is a perfect 3 because you look at Monty, and this team was not in the playoffs, then they're the second team. First of all, from the end of the season when Corona first hit until now, they have the best record. Adding the playing tournament, adding, the bubble and all that stuff going to this year, they have the best record. So best regular season record. So when I look at Monty Williams and his job he's done with this team, especially this year, second best, team in the West, second best, record in the entire league. When I look at them and the job he did with his roster that's not really star-studded. You got 2 All-Stars, but they're not really star-studded. A lot of great role players, and that has to do with coaching. So I definitely think he deserves to be on this list. You got Tom Thibodeau. This is a guy that, has in my opinion, a questionable, rep because, he overplays his starters. But, the positives is his team's going to be hardworking and they're going to be a great defensive team. And so what he did with this Knicks roster, because they were not a top echelon roster. A lot of people didn't have them in the playoffs to begin with. A lot of people, including myself, I was not thinking them in the playoffs. Maybe a play-in tournament at best. And the fact that they're the number 4 seed because he came in and changed the culture that was with this team last year, not, the entire culture of the franchise. Because, then, you can kind of say that because they haven't been good in a while, but the recent coach around his team, he changed that and made them hardworking and a great defensive team. So, and in their top 4 seed, he definitely deserves to be here. That Quinn Snyder, this guy is one of the best coaches consistently every single year, but this year he took off and they were able to become the number 1 seed in the West and the whole entire league. And the funny thing is, they missed Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell for the back half of the season, and were still able to keep that number 1 seed, which is amazing if you really think about it. Your best 2 players or 2 of your best 4 players are out, and one of them is your best player, and you're still able to keep that number 1 seed. So I'm not mad at those 3 as well. Shout out to Doc and Steve Nash, who I think a lot of people overlook. Doc took a number 6 seed in the East to the number 1 seed in the East, and they retooled the roster. He made a lot of players in that squad better. And then Steve Nash, y'all should know how I feel about him. I picked him to win Coach of the Year award when the season first started because I knew, what the media was going to say. 1 minute, before they get, 1 minute when they get James Harden, I predicted this in my, videos that I posted on YouTube. I said, this is what I said. Once they get James Harden, we're going to hear, it's not going to work. And I broke it down how it was going to work. And when the 8 games they played, and even when it was KD and Harden and Kyrie and Harden, I said James Harden is going to be the playmaker because he's the best passer. And he led the league in assists multiple times. And he was second. If you look at, he averaged over 10 assists this year when he played. I said he's going to be the main playmaker. And he's going to let KD and Kyrie worry about just getting buckets. They said it's not going to work. And I laughed. Because Kyrie and KD can play off the ball. So I laughed at all that. Even James Harden, they all play on off-the-ball system. So I truly laughed at that. They said it's not going to work. They said there's not enough ball to go around. But then when it starts to work, they say, that's what's supposed to happen. That's that's what you're supposed to do when you have 3 superstars. So I laugh at the narrative. And then honestly, another reason why Steve Nash should, really be, praised and, in consideration. He has a good coaching staff, but if you look at this team and the different lineups they had to use because their 3 best players were both in and out of the lineup, especially James Harden and Kevin Durant missed like half of the season. And the different lineups they had to play. Then you have guys, when you pick up LaMarcus Aldridge, then, he retires a couple years later. My prayer hands to him. I hope he gets healthy, But then all the different guys you have coming in and coming out, and the fact that they were still the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. And if I want to be completely honest, they didn't have injury problems, and they can stay healthy the entire year. Mostly like the Sixers did. Embiid missed time, but our second and third best player was able to, play the majority of the year. That was to happen with them. They'd be the number 1 seed in the East about 5-6 games, and probably the best record, in the NBA. But the fact that they were still able to be 1 or 2 games behind us, the Sixers, with all the different lineups that they had, shows they have a great head coach. So on the finalist, again, I'll go over it. For the MVP, you have Steph and Jokic. The only one I kind of don't agree on is Steph. Personally, I want the winner to be Embiid, but the winner is probably going to be Jokic. For Defensive Player of the Year, you have Rudy Gobert, Draymond, Ben Simmons. I like Ben, but I can't really argue with these 3. I want the winner to be Ben Simmons. I don't know how the media is feeling with this. Won't be surprised though if they give it to Rudy just because they don't like Sixers. 6th man of the year, you got Jordan Clarkson, Joe Ingles, Derrick Rose. Confused on why you got 2 players on the same team, but it's going to Jordan. Rookie of the year, you got LaMelo, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton. That's been a race the entire year, and I think it's going to LaMelo, but it's very close. But the media loves LaMelo. That's why I won't be surprised they give it to him. Then, most improved player, you got Jeremy Grant, Michael Porter Jr., and Randall. I think it's, between, if I had to go 1 and 2, I think it's going to be, Randall and PJ, but there's no way Randall doesn't win this award. Coach of the year, you have Quinn Snyder, Tom Thibodeau, Monty Williams. Personally, I think Monty should win, but I'm not mad at either of these picks, if I'm being honest. All these guys deserve it. Like, when it comes to Coach of the Year, I never argue with that, because especially the past couple years, because I feel like every coach definitely deserved to be in the mix. But that's my thoughts on a finalist, and I'm going to break it down when they actually, pick the winners. I'm scared because I feel like none of my Sixers are going to get awards. Exec of the year, hopefully that comes over here to Philly. But yeah, man, this is a great season. This was a great season, and I'm going to post real quick. You're going to see the picture I had, who I thought was going to win these awards at the beginning of the season, and how wrong I have been. But at the end of the day, that's what it is. If you love the NBA, a lot of players could be up for these awards, but at the end of the season, you have guys separate themselves. You have coaches separating themselves, and that's what we saw this year. That's a wrap for this episode. Thank you all for listening. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at sportsw_Chris. sportsw_Chris. You can also find me on Facebook, Sports Talk with Chris. Sports Talk with Chris. Those are my 3 social media platforms. Feel free to reach out. I respond to anybody. I react to anybody. And I post a lot of clips, a lot of information, about sports on all those pages. So make sure you follow and tune in. But like I said, man, thank you all for listening. Stay tuned for future episodes. Have a wonderful day.